Hello, and welcome to ES Repair. I am your host, Mr. Fix-It. In this video, we're just kind of goofing off, showing you kind of like what we do when we're not making videos or we're not at work, but just goofing off and stuff. We got an amplifier here that I'm wanting to look at. Found it at a junkyard. Wanting to see if it's fixable and repairable, but who knows. If it's not, at least I can still take it apart and have some parts from it. So what I'm going to do first now is I'm going to hook some power up to it, see what this amplifier does, and hopefully I can determine what the problem is with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hook some power up to this amplifier to see what's wrong with it. Maybe trace stuff out. It could be as simple as a diode, because I've seen people hook these things up backwards. But I'm going to have a look-see and hopefully I can fix it, because it does look like a nice amplifier to have. First thing I'm going to do is hook the power up to it. As you can see on here, you have a fuse. You have your battery connector for your positive. You got your ground connector here, and some of these amplifiers have a remote. And what it does is some radios in cars have a remote wire that can run to this amplifier, so anytime you turn your radio on, it will automatically turn your amplifier on as well. Then
or your key switch.
Yeah, from the key switch. Now over here you have your speaker hookup. You have your left and your right. This side you have your input status. You got your speaker level input. You got your line input. And you can adjust your level of how loud it can go. You got your stereo, if you want it mono stereo or if you want it bridged. And your filter, which filters out noises. And as you can see here, I've already got it apart. This is basically what's inside of them. And what I'm going to do is hook up power to it, and you can't always see physical damage to these. If it's physical, a lot of times you'll see something burned on the board, something's turned black. You can
blowed up, busted.
Maybe smell something burnt, blowed up, busted, who knows. But I've been looking through this and I don't see anything that's physical wrong with it. But it could be under the board. I don't know. But we're going to find out. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hook some power up to it. Maybe I can figure out what's wrong with it. So I'm going to take my hot wire. I'm going to hook it up to the hot side. Make sure it's got a good connection. I'm going to tighten it down. I'm going to take my ground, hook it to the center. Now when you're connecting your amplifiers, you want to make sure that you got good clean contacts here to make very good contact. You don't want no resistance between the wire and the contacts. You want it to be as good as possible. Now, to make this remote come on, I'm going to hook this power up to the remote. All the remote does is it sends a 12-volt power supply from this side to the remote, and it kicks it on.
Or from your key or radio.
Well, any power supply or 12-volt source will work. Some of them from the key, some of them when you turn the radio on. And flip the switch. Well, it's not smoking. Now, these amplifiers use what's called a switching power supply. And that switching power supply is located right here. You see these great big capacitors. And this is the inductor. It's a process which what happens is when the power goes through there, it's constantly turning on and off. at a very high rate, usually around 41,000 hertz. And this provides a lot more power and requires less energy. Now, I need your tester. Make sure I'm getting power down there. As you can see here, thank you. As you can see here, there's a diode sitting right here. You can see the gray stripe on the end of it. This is a polarity check. What happens is if you use it incorrectly, hook the power wires up incorrectly, this will cause a direct short, blowing the fuse. It's supposed to protect the circuitry that's in here, because if it's hooked up backwards, then it can damage something severely. But if it shorts out, a lot of times you can just replace it, replace the fuse, and you're back to in operation. Well, as you can see, there's a light that's coming on, which means I'm getting power. And sure enough, there it is. Barely visible. But I do know there's power getting to it. So what I want to check now to see if the amplifier is putting out any kind of a signal. This side over here is the actual amplifiers, or transistors, whichever you want to call them. They're connected to heat sinks, which allows them to produce sound. This side over here, this bottom side, runs this thing here, the inductor, to create your power. So far we are getting power. So now let's check to see if we're getting any sound. What I'm going to do is use a small speaker here. I don't need a great big powerful speaker, just something to test my amplifier with. I'm going to hook the green wire to my ground, my hot wire to the center pin there. Then I'm going to connect the speaker. Now if the amplifiers are working, you should be able to hear like a hissing noise. Now something's coming through there. Yeah, it makes sound. And I am getting a hissing noise. Okay, now I did get some hissing noise from the amplifier, which indicates that the amplifier is working. The next step would be to check to see the input side. What I'm going to do is give it an audio signal and see if the amplifier is actually amplifying the sound, which I'm going to do next. I'm going to borrow WizKid's stereo, and I'm going to hook up. This amplifier has two different inputs. It's got a low level input, which uses RCA plugs, and it's got speaker level inputs, which also has resistors that drops the voltage down to a manageable size without burning something up in the amplifier. Well, since his speaker don't have line level, I got to use a speaker input. So, plug it in, connect it. Make sure you get your negative and your positive separated. Make sure you get these all in the correct polarities. Your negatives to the negatives and the positive to the positive. If you do not, you can either damage the amplifier or the stereo, or your sound will be all distorted. Okay, now got the input connected. we are going to be on the right channel. So now what I need to do is hook up using one of his speakers. I'm going to hook up the right channel. And see what we get. Now, turn the power on. And what you know it, we got some sound. But it don't sound right. Which could indicate there's still something wrong. Very distorted. It could indicate something's still wrong with it.
It is pretty bad speaker too.
Oh, a bad speaker, yeah. Let's have a check here, see if there's any components. Now, they're all nice and cool. Power supply is functioning right. Whew, I think I found a problem here. Borrow his temperature thing here. It indicates I may have found a problem here as to why we found this thing in the junkyard. I'm finding an integrated circuit that's getting pretty hot. And that should not be getting this hot. Let's see here. I'm going to borrow WizKid's infrared thermometer. He uses that testing on his engines and stuff. I want to see if this will... Oh yeah. Yeah, I do think I found the culprit. As you can see, it's getting way up there. It should not be nowhere near that temperature. That thing should be operating around the room temperature. You can see how hot that thing's getting, so that's a good indication there's something wrong. Hopefully I can replace it. Now, we got that one there. We'll look numbers up on there. Since that is hot, let's check around and see if anything else is. Oh, that's around 84. That's room temperature. Oh, here we go. This one here looks like it's raising it. Yep. Yep, there's a problem one there too. Yeah, we got two problems here. We got this chip here, integrated one, which is I'll bet it's a preamplifier because it's connected to the speaker input. And we got a transistor right here that's getting hot too. What I'm going to have to do now is look up these numbers, find out what they are, and see if I can order new parts. And then check the amplifier again, and hopefully it will fix the problem. Well, this is going to be the end of this episode. We know what was wrong with the amplifier. I'm going to have to be looking up some parts for it. So, hopefully I'll get the parts for it and we can get this amplifier working again. This is the end of the episode. I'm Mr. Fix-It. Thank you for watching.